Women Speak Up to Lead Up. We are on episode number 145, and today we have the beautiful Heather Rausch with us. I can't wait for you to get to know her and get to learn a little bit more about her. But I want to start first off with our sponsor from today, Dr. Melissa Balazan. Are you in pain? Are you suffering from anxiety or depression? Do you suffer from constipation? Even if you don't want to admit it, you might, right? Are you being treated for a chronic condition such as high blood pressure or high cholesterol? Are you tired of being put on medication after medication? Are you finally ready to ditch the pills and discover the root cause? At Ask Dr. Melissa, we help our clients shift from a plethora of pills to just a few truly necessary ones. Together, we peel back the Band-Aids and get rid of the unnecessary things that are just treating symptoms. It's time to treat the root cause. Together, we leverage the established benefits of Eastern and Western medicines, focused on the true root cause of the issue and address it from the core. So be sure to schedule your Ask Dr. Melissa consultation today at www.askdrmelissa.net. Now, back to the show with our guest, Heather Rausch. And we named today's episode Events Rock because she is like the event queen. And so I want to talk all about how she does it, why she does it, how it's a benefit for you to learn a little bit more about events, what they exist, why they exist and what they're good for. Heather's the founder and CEO of Foxfire Events. Heather is a well-recognized global leader whose talent and passion is creating opportunities that unite dynamic women. No wonder why we're attracted to each other on this. Through Foxfire Events' 11-year history, Heather creates well thought out virtual and live events celebrating the power of women, connecting community and business, strengthening business and social relationships. Heather continues to be a force in her local community and has expanded her leadership globally, optimizing virtual connection opportunities over the last 2 years. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I'm so happy to be here.
So we all know, right, when the pandemic hit, there had to be a big pivot, which so many people have talked about over the last couple of years, and you were just meeting locally with your groups and your events. So talk about what happened, obviously there was a little shakeup and, oh my gosh, what happens now? So tell us what you went through with that when that happened.
Yeah, that was quite interesting. To your point, back then we were doing everything live. So we were producing many events every single month locally here in Arizona. So March of 2020, we had to really shift quickly, right? Make that pivot really quickly if we were going to be able to continue to connect women through our events. So I did that. I had never done a Zoom event before. I had participated on a Zoom, I think once or twice before that. And I realized that, first I started researching, right, what platforms I could utilize and that sort of thing, how I would bring women together virtually. So that was the first thing I did. I decided that I was going to put everything onto Zoom that I was doing, and that we were just going to do our very best to stay connected, continue to gather and meet, but it had to be done obviously differently than we had done in the past. So we did that. And it was actually, at first I was really hesitant, right? Because like I said, I had never hosted a Zoom. I didn't think that I really loved technology all that much. I used to always say I'm a people person, I'm not a technology person, but I learned really fast. It wasn't that hard. I could do it, and it was a great opportunity for us to stay connected. And we needed to, we really needed to. At that point, of course, we didn't know how long all of this was going to last as far as not being able to gather. We didn't know if it was going to be, a few weeks, a few months. I mean, it's turned into over 20 plus months, that we've been doing all of this with virtually. And it turned out way better than I ever could have imagined. But initially, it was just a way for us to stay engaged, keep everybody connected, keep everybody together. And so that's what we did. We just quickly moved everything online.
How has now having the opportunity, because we're in Arizona, you're in Arizona, so having the opportunity to meet back in person and still having the virtual world, how has that hybrid really, that bridge really assisted you, because when you were meeting in person, you were only attracting those that were local, right? That could drive
Correct.
to get to the event. Then once you went online, it was available globally. And that's when you went global. Was that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really quite a blessing in disguise. And so we were able to expand and grow, which is tremendous. So as we're gathering, back in person, we are doing some things in person for those that are local and enjoy gathering live in person. And then we will, though, keep online connecting for the foreseeable future, all the way through 2022 at least. But it has been such an incredible tool. And we have met women in other cities, other states, other countries.
Yeah.
I put on a global conference this year where we had speakers from Italy and Ireland, all over the United States as well. And so it's just been a wonderful
Yeah.
opportunity to grow.
Yeah, I think technology really connects us on a whole different platform than what we did before. There are so many events that I've been able to attend since the pandemic that I actually attended them in person, but I liked the online platform better because I had the opportunity to meet more people in the breakout rooms than I did at the actual event. Sometimes, on the breaks, you would only get to meet one person, talk to two people. Then you were sitting there at round tables and there were speakers and things going on. And it's rude to like walk across the room and talk to someone, but I could DM someone technology, while in a Zoom room. So I don't know. I find that the technology of Zoom has really helped us connect in a whole different way than we would have connected in the past. But I know events, you didn't come out of the womb running events, right? So something had to have happened along the way, Heather, where you figured out that events was your thing, right? That was what you wanted to do. And when did you discover that you wanted to start an events company? Were you working for someone doing events? Is this in your background? Tell us a little bit about Heather Rausch and who you are, and let us get to know you a little bit more intimately.
Sure. Well, I didn't come out of the womb planning events. However, when I look back now, when I was younger, I used to, coordinate all kinds of little things, right? When I was younger, I was the one that was putting on the little dance shows and the little, and the family togethers and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting if you look back and you can see, were you doing back then what you do now, just in a different way, right? But to answer your question, back in 2010 is when I started Foxfire Events. So that's when I officially was planning events for a living, that sort of thing. But prior to that, my career was pretty varied. I went back and forth between working in corporate and being an entrepreneur. So I had owned a couple companies, I had worked in corporate, all of that. And so what back in 2010, or right before that, actually, I sat down and I took a look at, what do I really want to do and what skills do I have? What do I enjoy? All of that. And essentially, I decided I'm an entrepreneur. I definitely, I'm going to embrace that. This is back then I was saying I'm going to embrace this. I'm not going to go back and forth anymore. I love being an entrepreneur, and that's really where I shine. And so I sat down, I made a list of everything that I love to do, what I enjoy about it, all of it. And then at the end of this list, I looked at it and I said, now what kind of company can I create that will incorporate in as many of these things as possible? And for me, it pointed to events, because with events, you can create anything you want. You choose where you focus and what that focus is. For me, it's business focused events and working with business women. And so doing workshops and conferences and networking and things of that nature. But essentially, it was just literally sitting down one time and making that list out, looking at it, deciding what I was going to do, and then just jumping in and doing it. Creating my company, creating my LLC, a business plan, the strategy, all of that, and then just diving in and doing it. So that's what I've been doing since 2010. And the event world is really quite interesting. As I said, you can do anything you want. You can create anything you want to create, which to me is very exciting.
Yeah,
And it's
it
such a
is.
great tool, great opportunity. That's how I unite women, is through events. That's the vehicle I choose to use to do that,
Yeah.
are the events.
And all different types of events, right? So what are some types of events that ladies out there that are entrepreneurs today, if they want to start creating events in their community that they've built or with their clients? What are some events that are events that you run today?
So some of the ones that we do today are Foxy Women in Wine has become, quite popular because it's just a really fun and casual way to network, get to know people. So we're
Yeah.
doing those in person and online now. So that's a networking, but a casual manner of networking when we add in the wine aspect. We also are hosting an annual conference called Nourishing Spirit, Mind, Body. So that one's all about self-care and self-empowerment, self-love. And that, is an opportunity to listen to different speakers, engage with other attendees, and really nurture and fill yourself up. So it's one of those events that's really good for your soul. And what I found too, though, is when women come to events, not only do they talk about, are they there to nurture their soul, but they're going to talk about, what they do in their life and all that kind of stuff. So the business kind of stuff happens in a natural way through all of our events, which is really kind of cool. So everything's about, it's kind of multifaceted when we're doing events. So that's been a really cool one. We built a community. A community is kind of actually organically formed, and then I just built upon that called Fox Den United. And within Fox Den United, we have 4 events every month that we do. So we have a book club, a business mastermind, a coffee connect that's more of a social, and then Foxy Women and Wine's included in that as well for the members. So just, lots of different opportunities to really connect, gather women, unite, and do things that fill us up, socially and professionally.
Yeah, I'm part of the Fox Den, for those of you that are listening. And I love being part of other networks of women, right? And what I love about the way that Heather runs hers is you can just feel so relaxed and go connect with other women. And sometimes those women are retired and they're there to provide wisdom of things that they've done in the past, right? And I love being in rooms with them to be able to kind of tap into their knowledge and experience. And then also meeting new friends. And some of those friends have become very good friends of mine that I see on a regular basis. And that's what I love about events. So events bring people together. And I love that you mentioned the different types of events because it can be anywhere from a large, full day conference or 3-day conference that you do once a year, or it could be something as easy as bringing people together for a book club. And the book club is an event, right? The Coffee Connect is an event. All these things that you do are events. And so I think when people think of events, Heather, they think that they have to do all this planning to make it so big and over the top, but it really doesn't have to be, right? It could be just something simple where women get together and do something that they have in common.
Absolutely. It can be anything you want it to be, right? So it can be that intimate gathering where you're just, having a great time and doing like the book club or doing just, conversations, right? That you want to have. So it can be something as simple as that to something as elaborate as you mentioned to being, a festival or, these longer multi-day conferences and things of that nature. So we do all of that and I enjoy all of it because it's all meaningful. It's just a matter of what's your purpose for gathering, and then how do you best create that atmosphere and opportunity that's going to really benefit everybody.
Yeah, I like what you said about purpose. So what is the purpose for the event? And events are fun. People love coming to events, right? They love getting together purposefully for a reason. And it doesn't have to be elaborate or over the top. Like the Coffee Connect is just coming together in the morning over a cup of coffee and having a conversation. Maybe this is where you spark up an idea of something that someone else says and you're like, "Oh yeah, I've been wanting to write a book this year, but I haven't really thought about doing it." And someone shares their experience and connects you with someone, and before you know it, the ball is rolling for you. So surrounding yourself with other people and tapping into tribes that are able to offer you opinions, direction. These are important factors in being an entrepreneur. Wouldn't you say? I mean, It's a tough
Absolutely.
world being an entrepreneur.
It is. And I always say, like, my community hears me say this all the time, but powerful things happen when women unite, right? And it's
Yeah.
so true to your point. I mean, you never know what's going to spark when you're
Yeah.
having conversation, especially with women that are, just that like-minded, but then at the
Yeah.
same time, diverse in their experience level.
Yeah.
To your point, when we're connecting, whether it's somebody who's been in the business world for a really long time, has now retired, and now they have all this expertise and experience, right, that they can share in this
Hmm.
knowledge, or somebody that's just starting out and they're, working really hard to try to figure out what is the way. And you're
Yeah.
talking with women at every level and in between, and all kinds of ideas happen
Yeah.
and in conversation. And that's part, with masterminding and stuff too. I love doing that
Yeah.
because you just learn so much from each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important, and it's free advice. That's how I look at it, right? So you're not paying a coach, thousands of dollars to work with. It's free advice from peers and women that have done it before you, and have succeeded in other areas of their business. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Heather. So I want to dive in a little bit more about some of the mistakes that you've made, in building events, or things that you just assumed would work. Because I think it's important to talk about the trials that we've had along the way, as well as the successes, right? We can all get the advice from the successes, but I feel like we learn from the trials and the failures. So, what are some things that have happened during the time that you've created events or ran events? Is there like a really funny story that you have, or something you can share about something that just you thought it was going to be one thing and it actually turned out to be something else, that maybe it was a disaster? I don't know. I'll let you lead the conversation on that.
Yeah, there's, again, events are very interesting, right? Because we create, typically, if you're going to put on an event, you have this grand vision in your mind, right? And this is how you think it's going to go, and you
Yeah.
work towards that, and you plan for it, and all of that. And I think most people that have put on events of any kind know that you have to be flexible. You have to, you cannot be set on every single little detail being the way that it was in your head, no matter how hard you plan and how hard you work on it and how many hours you put in. I mean, that's life, right? We got to roll with things. So that's what I really learned in the beginning. I'm really good at just being on my feet and being, quick and nimble and that sort of thing. And knowing that everything's going to work out for the greatest good, right? And everything happens for a reason. So that's the first thing I would say, is just you have to know that going in, because I've worked with people in the past where they didn't believe that or they didn't
Hmm.
think that, and they learned really quickly. People, and then the other thing, people only know something's going wrong if you let them know something is going wrong, unless it's major, right? But just roll with this stuff. But for me, it's a matter of, like, I had some events that didn't go the way I had wanted in the beginning, especially. I remember I put on a New Year's event. It was the first and the last one I'll ever do, only because I worked really, really hard on that event. And again, this was at the very beginning. I think it was the first year of my company. And, back then I did everything I thought I was supposed to do. I asked everybody, I did the market research ahead of time. Would you be interested in coming to this type of event? This is the price point. This is what we'd be doing. I did my research. When it came down to it, we didn't have the turnout I had wanted. We didn't, all those folks that said, yes, absolutely, I'd love to do that, didn't buy tickets, right? And when it came down to it, and I said, hey, you said you were interested, and they said, oh, I know, we had a change of plans, but that was the majority of people. So, and that happens often, you guys, no matter what kind of event it is. And so you just have to know, I'll tell you, with that event, my gut told me, my intuition was, this isn't the time. I was very new in my business, and I invested a lot of money in a lot of guarantees and minimums, to the resort. It was at a beautiful resort. And, it did not benefit me. I'll say we ate and drank very well that night for those of us that were there, because we had to hit those minimums, on our food and drink. So
Yeah.
it's something I learned along the way. And I share that story because a lot of people will plan an event and they think, oh, no worries, I can do a $10,000 guarantee to the resort, or a $20,000 guarantee, or whatever that number is. And in their mind, and based on what, the research they've done, they should be able to make that, they think. But when it comes down to it, it's very likely you may not, and so I just caution people with making guarantees, things like that, be super careful and talk to somebody that is very knowledgeable in this, so that you don't end up losing money, or, just being disappointed, because that, it can happen. It hasn't happened to me since, which is great. I learned my lesson. I also learned, I follow my intuition all the time now. If I get the message, hey, this isn't the right time to do something, I don't do it, because it's there for you for a reason, right? So we have to listen.
I totally agree with that. And I'm glad that you shared that story with everyone, because we need to underestimate how many attendees we think we're going to have, right? And over plan. And you're right. I mean, if you have guaranteed yeses, meaning that you've put ticket sales out and you've hit a quota that you have as a minimum of people purchasing those tickets, and they've actually followed through with the yes, then go ahead and put that deposit down and tell them that you'll pay, because then But you're right, putting down a large deposit like that. I was just working with someone the other day that's working on doing her first retreat. And I said, you don't even have to put the money down for the house that you want to rent in May. Why don't you get some ticket sales out there and see who really would buy a ticket for the May event? And then if you have a minimum of 3 or 4 people that say yes and purchase, then you can go ahead and put the deposit down on the house and move forward with the event. But if you're still trying to sell tickets and no one's committed, and you're 2 months, 3 months out, you would be stuck with that, paying the full deposit and the second payment on that house, or that event location, and you would have made no money back, right? So you're hanging out in an Airbnb by yourself that weekend, right? And it's sad to say that, but you really have to be very careful with your budgeting and planning on events. Most people overspend on their events for what the value and everything they want to bring to all the attendees, and the gifts and the swag and the photographer and the DJ and the food and the drink. But then you don't get the money return in tickets or sponsors. And if you don't get that, you eat it. And it's, who wants to run an event company or do an event where they're paying people to be there?
Absolutely. And it happens all the time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten, over the last 11 years, where people say, oh my gosh, my event's in 2 weeks. I've paid all this money and I don't have the registrations, can you help me find people? And, that's not my gig. I don't find people.
They're like,
that's not what I do. So
you're like, I do the event. You get the butts in the seats.
Exactly.
So, right.
So,
but I'm glad you said that, Heather, because I believe what happens is, as the entrepreneur that's in charge of the brand, right? It's our company. We take so much time doing the planning instead of hiring an event planner, right? We think we're saving the money by hiring an event planner. So we don't hire an event planner. We do it on our own. Now, I hire an event planner. I don't do, there's very few things I do on my own. And free events, of course, I do those on my own. But when I do large events, I ask the event planner to plan the event, and then I spend all my time selling the event, right?
Yeah.
I'm the face. I sell the event. I talk to people about it. I'm doing workshops to get people to the event. So our responsibility, if we're running an event, especially something that's a higher ticket item or that's going to cost you a lot more money to put on, your responsibility is to get the butts in the seats. The event planner is the one that plans the event and takes care of all the details, crosses the T's, dots the I's. Wouldn't you say, Heather? Because that's what you do, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. I am so glad you said that because
Yeah.
most people do the opposite, and they're not successful with it. And so, to your point, the way you do it, that's the right way to do it. That's
Yeah.
why you're successful with your
Yeah.
events, right? Because you're so right. The event planner does not get the butts in the seats,
Right.
and you know what you're selling. You should be the one selling that, right?
Yeah.
Because and you shouldn't be wasting your time, on the other details, because that's not your expertise,
Right.
right? So you're going to get better deals on your venues. You're going to get better, deals with everything that you're doing if you hire somebody who can
Right.
really champion that for you, and that is their expertise. So
Yeah.
100%.
And now
100%.
with Airbnbs and VRBOs and private chefs that are out there, there's so many ways for you to book an event at an Airbnb, at a VR, and that could be your event space that you book. And it's most of the time it's so much cheaper than having an event at a huge resort somewhere where they have astronomical fees and 25% on tax on this and 25% overages on that. And I remember when I first started Lead Up for Women, and I was doing luncheons around the United States, and some of the events we had to do them in hotels, and let me tell you, they were the most expensive places to do it and cost me the most money, and I usually broke even. So I walked out of there with nothing. But any of the other ones that I would do, they would be in architectural spaces or in office spaces or in office spaces, conference rooms, places where we could still do it and hold the event and it looked just as beautiful, but I didn't have to pay that overage price of it being in a resort, or a
Yeah.
hotel room.
I always tell people, get creative with your venue and your space, right?
Yeah.
Is there someone you can collaborate with that has an incredible space that they want to showcase as
Yeah.
well, right? So get creative with that. I hosted a workshop years ago called So You Think You Want to Have an Event. And it was all people who thought either were holding smaller events and wanted to expand them, or they thought that they wanted to have an event. They were
Right.
business owners, right? And so we talked about, is an event the right strategy? Is it the right vehicle? Because events are costly typically, right? And
Yeah.
so is it the right investment? Because it's not always, as
Right.
an event planner, I'll tell you, if someone comes to me and says, I want to hold this event, and I first ask them why, what's the purpose, right? What's your end
Yeah.
goal with it? What are you trying to accomplish? And oftentimes I'll talk them out of having an event, right? So because it's
Smart.
not going to meet their goal. And so why would I want them to be successful. So
Right.
I'm not going to just say, okay, you can pay me this amount of money and then have it not be a success.
Yeah.
That's not going to do anybody any good, really,
Yeah.
in the long run, right? And so there's so much to consider with that. But to your point, the venues, get creative and that, because I love resorts, are beautiful, and sometimes it's a great fit depending what you're trying to do and accomplish and all of that. But you will pay for it, and you have to understand that plus that comes after every price that they give you, with the additional tax and gratuities and service charges and all that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we talked about that. Events are the best, right? Events bring tribes together. Events get people into your fold to know, like, and trust you. Events are fun. There's so many about events. That's why I named today's episode Events Rock, because there's so much about events that are great. So Heather, tell us about any events that you have coming up, for one. And then on top of that, how someone can join in, and participate in your community, network in your community, be part of your events, and how the best way for people to reach you and connect with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. So we have 2 events remaining this year, and I would love to offer any of your listeners, if they'd like to attend those at no charge, they're welcome to. They're virtual events. We have one on this Friday. It's a Coffee Connect. So it's an opportunity just to get to know other women in business and chat about life and business. We're going to be doing a fun service project with a nonprofit as well, making some appreciation cards. Again, it's virtual, so you do it from your home or office. So that's this Friday at 9 o'clock Arizona time. And then next week on Tuesday, December 21st, we have our Foxy Women in Wine Global, which will be great fun as well. That's 5 p.m. Arizona and open to women anywhere in the world. Great opportunity to network. And we'll have, a little holiday cheer and some reindeer games too, since it's during the holidays during that. But again, just great opportunities to connect with people. So would love for anybody to join us on those. And then if you're looking forward, out in the year, if you're already booked up on those dates, 2022 will have a ton of events. We do over 50 events a year. So there's lots of opportunities and you can always catch those on my website, which is foxfireeventsrock.com.
Awesome. So for those of you listening to this through the podcast, obviously we're past December, but if you go to foxfireeventsrock.com, you'll be able to find a list of all the events. You'll be able to connect with Heather directly to learn how you can get in the fold. For those of you listening and are at Lead Up for Women on Facebook and are watching the video live, we'll put the information below on how you reach out to Heather for you to be able to actually attend those events. This month. I highly recommend you do. I'll be there. I'm a strategic partner of Heather's. I love working with her and bringing my community together with her community. So we'll continue doing that moving forward. And I just want to thank you, Heather. I think, events are something that we all do. And whether we think we do or not, we do at some level. If it's a mastermind you do, or just a little gathering of networking you do once a month with your community, that's an event, right? So learning how we can make those events better, how we can take those events and lead them into other events or other products and services that we have is a whole nother art that we haven't even touched on today. So think about it. If you haven't started your own event, connect with Heather to find out how you can start your first event kind of at a lower level of how you would do that. And she's here to serve you for that. So Heather, thank you so much for being with us today and educating us on events. I love events.
Thank you, Colleen. Yeah, it's been a great opportunity that I appreciate so much. And thank you for everything you're doing through Lead Up for Women. Such a great community and such great information that you share and opportunities. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for being my friend.
Yes, thank you for being my friend.
That's the best part of this, y'all. You get to meet women and you become friends with them. And that's the best part, right? So we'll just leave you with this today. Remember, ladies, you are the only you that's ever been. You're the only you that will ever be. So if in your mind you've been thinking, I want to have events, then do it. If your intuition is telling you, I really need to put on an event, it's probably because you need to put on an event and someone out there needs what it is that you have to offer. Every event is so different. So lean into it. Give yourself permission to do what it is that you want to do in your business, to reach others, to impact others, and to make a lasting change. And with that, we'll see you next week. So until then, be you and be strong. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a wonderful week and happy holidays.